Yo, I'm Bob. Into Star Wars, happen to be totally blind since birth, talking about Season 1, Episode 4 of The Acolyte on Disney+. Plus. This one's called Day. Simply Day. It premiered on the day of June 18th in 2024. Spoilers ahead. If you haven't watched the episode, I'd advise you to do that or you're going to get spoiled. That being said, jumping right in, and you were warned. I like the day in the life scene we get right at the beginning of the episode where you got Kalnaka and he's in his shelter. He's making himself some stew. Maybe he's dispatched several of those moths. Maybe he's eating moth meat. I'm not sure what he's eating there, but he's mixing herbs into some stew. Maybe it's the maybe it's a stew recipe that he got from Gourmanda, from the holiday special with the beat, stir whip, stir whip. I've seen that too many times. The Riff Tracks version, narrated by, Mystery Science Theater 3000 alumni, Michael J. Nelson, Bill Corbett, and Kevin Murphy. It's the only way I'm able to watch the holiday special. Otherwise, I'd have to deal with a bunch of, groaning and no context clues at all when it comes to what the Wookiees are doing. You can't say day in the life when you're talking about a Wookiee and not think of Life Day and the holiday special. But yeah, he's just kind of keeping to himself in his shelter there. And the audio description track narrated by Nicole Zanzarella on Disney Plus points out that he has etched that spiral symbol into his walls there quite a few times. And Alicia Brenner on Twitter pointed out that it seems as if this big Wook here has a guilty conscience. And I really like that because, like Soul, I get the sense that he feels like he could have done better. Maybe there's more to that final scene on Brendok. As I'm recording this, only 4 episodes have aired, so who knows? We might get to see a bit more as to what happened that night. We might not. So then we get to see the younglings in the Jedi Temple as they're practicing with their Boken sabers. And the audio description track does point out that that's what they're practicing with. So I'm reminded of Balin Skull derisively referring to Boken Jedi during the Ahsoka show there, as they're practicing with those wooden sabers there. You got Osha showing up and seemingly saying her goodbyes to Jecki. And I like the little moment that they had there. They've become friends there. And Osha thinks that, she's going to be able to ride off into the sunset. She feels like she's done doing what she can for her sister. She doesn't want to become involved in the situation any more than she has. I feel like she's afraid that it'll turn her to the dark side. She just wants to get on with her life, go on her merry way. And I remember watching this for the first time. I feel like I've seen the episode around 6 times now, because there's so much that I feel like I've missed. So I go back and I watch it about 5 or 6 times before I review. But yeah, I remember thinking, you're not going anywhere. You're sucked into the situation, whether you want to be or not. The Jedi aren't done with you. You feel like you're done with them, but yeah, they're not done with you. As we see in the next scene, you've got Sol and Vernestra, you got Kiadi-Mundi, and some Jedi that we haven't met yet. The folks on Twitter are referring to this as the Middle Management Council. They're not going to be meeting with the Jedi High Council because they're afraid that that will in turn alert the Senate. They've got some political enemies that they're not really wanting to deal with. So, I mean, even though this is 100 years before the rise of the Empire and all that, so long before the prequels, you get the sense that the Jedi are already becoming mired in politics. And they're having to keep a lot of things close to their robes, as it were. So they feel like they need to deal with May, I guess, rather secretly. So they're not wanting to reveal anything to the High Council. And they don't know who she is, who she works for. They're assuming that, this is some kind of a splinter group. They're not even thinking about the Sith. That's how the Jedi are in their arrogance. I believe that they think that nothing can shatter the peace that they've brought, or that they think they've brought to the galaxy. They're not thinking about the Sith at all, even though this is probably Sith related. You've got Sol going after Osha, of course, and he feels like there is still good in May. That's something that many Star Wars characters have said in quite a few stories. I know Luke said that there's still good in Vader. Padme said there's still good in Vader. You know, it's all about redemption. So Sol feels like with Osha's help, they can bring May back to the light. This is Sol attempting to make up for what he feels he did wrong in the past. He had no idea that May had survived. So he's really trying to make up for what he feels is a past mistake. And that's kind of how I look at it anyway. And it goes along with Sol's character. He's a very compassionate Jedi. He's bent on helping people. As the Grand Inquisitor and Obi-Wan Kenobi said, I mean, he can't help it. It's in his nature. He feels like he needs to do what he can for this person he barely knows, even though she has dispatched 2 Jedi Masters already. But that's Sol for you. There is a lot of trekking through the forest of Kofar in this episode. And I was hoping we get a few more scenes with Camir and May, and we definitely got that in the episode. As to whether or not Camir is the stranger in the mask, I feel like it's too obvious. They're making it a bit too obvious. Hopefully it's someone else. I still don't buy anything this guy's saying. He sounds as if he's trying to throw his innocence in the faces of the audience. Like, oh, look how unassuming and innocent I am. Ooh-da-doo-da-doo. You know, you failed so many times, but, you know, I feel like you can still kill this Wookiee, May, if you really try hard enough. Oh, by the way, you know, who was that Jedi Master that your sister was hanging around with? Sol? Never mind the fact that I'm trying to get you stoked for what you're going to have to do. No, I'm innocent, totally innocent. I feel like he knows a lot more than he says. As for whether or not he's Darth Smiley or whoever the fans are calling the guy in the mask, I don't really know, and I don't really care. I'm just in this to enjoy the story. It could be him, might not be him. It could be Quarrel under the mask. I don't really know at this point. I've never really been big on theorizing, well, it's definitely this person. I've got to call this so I can be right. I'm just kind of watching him manipulate her. He could be vying for top position here. He could be attempting to get her out of the way so, you know, he can take her place. Because if these two are acolytes to a Sith master, this guy might have his eye on a higher position of power. But he very well could be the individual in the mask. We don't know at this point. All we can do is speculate. Although I feel like if it is him, they really made it a bit too obvious. Hopefully he's just a red herring. He claims that he hasn't seen the face of the master, that he owes the master, that the master collects people. And of course I'm reminded of Pagus in the expanded universe novel of the same name. He had several deals that he made. He had folks from all walks of life that he would just pick up and put down whenever he would need them. I'm actually very much tempted to reread Plagueis, even though it is an expanded universe novel. I've read it about 6 times, 7 times now, and this show's really making me want to step back into his head. I don't know if we'll see him or not, but when you have Camir talking about the master collecting people. It certainly makes me think of Plagueis, who very well could be in the show. He might not be very young at all. We don't know his birthday in the new timeline. His B-day hasn't been brought up at all. He could be quite a bit older at this point. Who the heck knows? So you've got the scene on the Jedi shuttle en route to Kofar and the introduction of Basil. Now, when he starts sniffing Pip and making his interesting alien sound effects, I honestly thought, was this guy rabid? I mean, if he bites someone, are they going to get rabies? Because he just kind of sounds a bit unhinged. I know he's supposed to be cute and endearing. I don't know. I feel like if he bites somebody, you might need to get shots. But I kind of like the character. I know he's just there to guide them through the forest of Kofar. I like that he's such an interesting tracker. I would kind of like to see what he can do with a lightsaber. I wonder what his saber looks like. I'm not sure if we're going to be seeing him after this episode or not. I don't know if he's going to make it out. So you've got everybody landing, and there's Jecki asking the grand Poobah alien on the big throne there as to where Kalnaka is, and he's apparently gone into the forest and hasn't emerged. So you've got the Jedi trekking through the forest, you've got the Antagonist trekking through the forest, just a big walk through the forest, through, I think, the majority of the episode. We get a little bit of an action scene with an Umber Moth. So you do get to see a Jedi wielding a saber in the episode. Not that I really need that. I've really liked all the hand-to-hand combat that we've gotten throughout these episodes. I feel like they're focusing much less on lightsaber action in this and a lot more on hand-to-hand fighting when you have your protagonist versus your antagonist. We're probably going to get a duel before all is said and done. Yeah, you've just got Soul whipping out the saber long enough to bisect that moth, and then he just puts it away. So when Osha is messing around with the insectoids on the tree there, when she touches one and it kind of scampers up the tree, it's probably not the Kretch from Children of the Jedi by Barbara Hamley in the expanded universe, but I couldn't help thinking of that insectoid species. Those were very disgusting, and they played a pretty big role in that book from way back in the 90s. I'll always remember those disgusting insectoid species. Now this one, like whenever he moved up the tree, he left this ring of goo behind, according to the audio description track, and that was just all kinds of disgusting. I doubt it was the Kretch, but I couldn't help thinking of that species from Children of the Jedi. I need to reread that one too, since I'm able to experience so many of the Star Wars EU novels unabridged now. I need to go back and reread that unabridged. I think that one unabridged will be my, third read through. I used to listen to the abridged audio cassettes back in the day. I mean, it was what we had, but it's cool to go back now and really get into the older stuff. Like the pep talk Jecki gives Osha as they're on their way to Kalnaka's hut. Osha feels like she is going to have to face her sister, face her past. She doesn't feel like she can do it, but I mean, Jecki pretty much says that, you know, you're not defined by what you've lost, you're defined by what you've survived, and you've survived a lot. So, you know, she's not really feeling like she can do this, but I like that Jecki is giving her as much encouragement as she can. So you've got May, who's, I guess, plotting to get out from under the Master's thumb. Since she's learned that her sister is alive, she feels like she doesn't really want to be a part of this massive web of intrigue anymore, but it does go along with the dark side. Folks on the dark side can have attachments. They can think of no one but themselves. And since her sister is still around, I feel like May is like, I don't really need this guy anymore. I can go off and maybe my sister and I can bring down the Jedi. I don't know. May is, of course, thinking about her own interests. And, she feels like she doesn't need the master anymore. She feels like she doesn't need to dispatch any more Jedi. She's like, man, my sister's alive. I'm done with this mess. I want out. So, I mean, it really seemed like a sporadic thing when I watched it for the first time. But you can't climb inside a character's head as they're trekking through the forest unless she's monologuing to another character, which she didn't really do. I mean, she just kind of feigns exhaustion, sets a booby trap, and Camir is hoisted way up into the air. And even his screams for help sound fake. I feel like he's not very good at convincing others that he is innocent and unassuming. I don't like this guy. I don't really know if he is the guy behind the mask. I'm kind of 50-50 on that right now. If he is, that's fine. If he's not, that's fine too. But his cries for help really cracked me up because I don't know if he's all that great at appearing weak and helpless or surprised. Because she's like, yeah, I don't need you anymore. I'm going to go tell Kalnaka everything. And then he just kind of says, he'll unalive you in this flat, emotionless voice. I mean, he goes from appearing to be helpless and unassuming to just kind of like, okay, I see what you're up to. And then she kind of goes off and heads to the shelter. And then you've got the ending of the episode where Basil finds the shelter. You've got all the Jedi. You've got the Antagonist as well. And they're all headed to the same place. And right when we get to the good part where, the master shows up and he ignites his saber, he's already dispatched Kalnaka. I was hoping he would actually do some fighting in the episode, but no, he didn't really get to do anything before Darth Smiley showed up and ended him. And then you've got the master force pushing everyone away. And right before we were going to have our big throwdown, we cut to black, as the audio description track says. And so I don't know what next week's episode is going to be called. Possibly Night. I mean, if this week's was called Day, next week might be Night. I did mention that on Twitter. I hope next week isn't going to be an episode-long flashback. I kind of imagine Tom Kenny in his French narrator SpongeBob voice coming in and saying something like 16 years earlier. We're going to have to go see what things were like for May back when she was growing up. Hopefully we'll get right back into present day events in the next episode. But me doing the whole what if thing, I'm like, what if we have to wait 2 weeks for the big fight? Are we going to get an episode long flashback next week of just May doing stuff with the master? I would think that would be okay with me if we're going to get a very dark side centric episode. I get to see what she was up to, how she trained, maybe get to see a bit more of Smiley in his mask. By the way, Qui-Gon Jenna on Twitter mentioned that the big smile made her think of Abeloth. And I would love for that character to show up in the new timeline. It was such a horrific Lovecraftian baddie in the Fate of the Jedi series. I think it was one of my favorite characters in the expanded universe. She had such Lovecraftian air about her. And you really have to stop and consider Abeloth when you think about that massive smile design on the helmet there. I don't know whether or not she's going to have anything to do with the new timeline, though. She's a massive force to be reckoned with. So if she does show up in the new stuff, I hope that it's going to, I hope it's going to be done right. She's got to be very scary. This is probably just something that Mr. or Mrs. Darkseid has got going on with the mask. I don't know if it has anything to do with Abeloth or not. Would love to see the character show up, though, because we've got the father, the son, and the daughter, and it would be very cool if we got to see the mother showing up in canon. I would love to see that at some point. So I wonder if the antagonist could be an actual Darkseid artifact. We have come across masks in the past that have been able to possess the wearer. So, I mean, it could very well be an Exim Panshard situation from the new timeline. Because there was a very specific mask in the novel Shadow of the Sith that could, well, basically possess and influence the wearer. So, I mean, who knows? It could very well be Camir actually, being possessed by one of the artifacts that he has, that he's come across over the years. I don't know, but I do like the idea of something from the past coming up and influencing an antagonist in this particular series. I don't know though. Something I was thinking about. I think before the show even started. I know Alicia had mentioned that too. So I had hoped to see Kalnaka doing a bit of action stuff in the episode, but surprisingly not very much was done with his character. And I mean, that was a bit of a surprise to me. I thought we were going to really get to see him and May have a throwdown in the episode, but poor guy didn't get to do much. Other than that, though, it was a pretty suspenseful episode. It was very, very short, though. I feel like it was kind of a blink and you'll miss it episode. I mean, I liked what we got, but I really wish these would be a bit longer. They almost feel like episodes from animated series in terms of how short that they are. I mean, they fly by, especially episodes that have a lot of suspense building. And as for the cliffhanger, I mean, I wasn't that bothered by it. I was trained by the 1990s X-Men animated series. You had a cliffhanger in that. You had to wait every week to find out what was going to happen next. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of used to those. Hopefully I didn't forget about anything from the episode. Although if I did, I guess I could bring that up in next week's episode review. Don't know the title yet because it hasn't aired. And I guess I'll hear you guys in the next Acolyte episode review. Until then, may the Force be with you.